And I will always love you. My dudes, man, what a journey it's been on the old MXM. I just wanted to come in here and make this video on this game just to, talk about how I've never gotten the experience that I've gotten on MX Simulator in any other game. Still to this day, there is just something about MX Simulator, the feeling that that game gave me, that I've just simply not gotten anywhere else. And that's the only way I know how to explain it. This video is not me, gonna go in here and talk about why that is. I'm just telling you, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Still to this day, I can go back and get on MX Simulator, a game from 2007 made by one guy, and it gives me a certain, physical feeling that I'm telling you, there's just no other game like it for me. There's just no other game that gives me that same level of feeling to it. And at the end of the day, I mean, man, it's hard to replace that, It's very hard to replace that. And MX Simulator's been through so much horse shit over these past 3 years in the game, when RF shut down at the end of 2017, and then they started doing the Erode in the game. I mean, beta testing Erode in the game, okay? That's all it really has been, is a big beta test, all right? Ever since all that happened and all them, top boys in the pro racing got caught key sharing and hacking in the game, I mean, oh man. It's been a mess and a half in the game, and it's so crazy to me how no matter what MX Simulator goes through, I can still go back and have fun on it in a certain kind of way. I just have to block out all that bullshit, you know what I mean? It's, if I hop back in there like it's the good old days, like it's pre-Erode, 2017 Supercross tracks, 2015 and 16 outdoor tracks in the game, man. I mean, it's still that amazing game at its core, It's still that amazing feeling experience to the game at its core. No matter all the other bullshit it's went through, that's how gameplay can drive a game. It's not as much about graphics, it's not as much about all this other shit, That gameplay is definitely should be the most important thing to a game, and I'm telling you, on MX Simulator, bruh, it's a feeling like no other, man, and that's the thing that keeps me coming back to MX Sim, even though I've put more time into it than any other motocross game I've played, like by far. There's still something there that's got my interest, There's still something there. Even though graphical engine from 2007, there's still something there that pulls me back to it. There's still something there. So I know a lot of you guys have been wondering if I'm going to do any pro racing in 2022. So my sort of thought on that is, I mean, it's so unfortunate what's happened to MX Simulator because it's such a good game. It's actually too good for its own good. And that's been the biggest problem I've noticed with the game. For the type of game it is and how big of a game it could be, there's just nowhere near the amount of resources behind it and the amount of, the right kind of people behind the game to push it to that kind of level and do the right kind of things with it. And, it's just sad what's happened to it. It's like it's digging its own grave, and it's just, I don't know, it's struggling to find a way out of it. You know what I mean? It's continuing to go down all these shitty roads that got itself in that place in the first place. Just imagine this. Could you imagine if, let's say they would have never even fucked with the Erode in the game at all, because, it's a game engine from 2007. I digress. Let's not get too caught up on that here, okay? But let's say they didn't even try to start doing that beta testing, right? Let's say they was just doing that over here on the side. They were testing the Erode over here on the side instead of throwing it right into the pro racing of the game the first chance they could, okay, when it was nowhere near optimized to the level it should have been, nowhere near as good as it should have been. They have ruined so many pro races in this game and having to reschedule qualifying, messed up qualifying, lag, needed optimization, all the shitty laggy races they've had, pro races they've had in this game over the past 3 years. In combination with all of that and the no anti-cheat in the game, everybody and their grandmother getting caught hacking, cheating, key sharing, scamming the game, even some of the tippity top of the slope riders of the game getting caught doing that. I don't even have to name names. We know who you are, okay? All of that stuff in combination, and the building the tracks around the road, having weird different super friction traction to the tracks, building the jumps around the road, making that scaling smaller. It's a combination of all those things that has pulled me away from the game, specifically the pro racing of the game. And I just don't know how they're going to solve all of that at this point. It's like it almost needs a full reboot from the core of the pro racing organization, what JLV's doing in combination with the pro racing of the game. It's like it needs a complete overhaul from the core if it's ever even going to dream of getting back to where it was at one point in time. But it's like I've always said, you got to be so careful when you build a certain core to a game and a certain gameplay loop to a game. You have to be so careful when you go in there and you change critical elements of a game, as like they've done with the Erode system on MX Simulator. It has done such a massive change to the game. Whether or not you like Erode in the game or you don't like Erode in the game, it's a totally different game now. It's not even that same MX Simulator that I fell in love with back at the end of 14, into 15. It's not that same game anymore. And that's why I don't pro race in the game anymore. It's not the same professionalism in the pro racing. It's not the same track, ideas and designs and pre-made. Good God, don't even get me started on that lack of pre-made on the motocross tracks in the game. They went through some shitty years these past 3 years of no pre-made. Oh, man. There was some RF pro motocross tracks in like 2019, I think it was. Some of the most boring tracks I've ever rode on in this entire game. It's like, and we've come to that realization that pre-made is so fucking important to making tracks replayable, fun on lap one. You don't have to sit there for, 10, 15 laps with a full gate of riders to even, develop the track into something that's fun. It's just fun on lap one. You know what I mean? They've totally lost their way on the single player element of the game. The tracks are totally designed around 40 dudes on a gate running, 30-minute plus 2-lap motos. They're not designed for single player hopping in there on a new RF custom track and just having fun on it for 5 laps. It's just not built around that at all. And I don't know. They've changed the game to such a level at the core that it feels like I'm playing like an MX Simulator 0.7 or something. It's like this weird. It's that same game. You can go still play it like you used to. You go back to those tracks pre-2018. You get on there, turn the Erode completely off in the game, and it's still that super fun experience. But, we've gotten to that point now where now every track is being built so much around Erode that if you turn the Erode off on the tracks that are built around Erode, they're complete dog water. They're complete green baby puke level fun factor. Like, they're just so shitty that it's got people tricked up into thinking now that you have to have a road to even have fun. And that's true. You do have to have a road on those newer bullshit tracks that are built around it. Yeah, you do. But you didn't have to have that back in the day when they made proper obstacle scaling and skill gap and pre-made ruts and pre-made roughness. You didn't even have to have it back then, and I don't know, man, it's just so much been changed. But like, could you imagine if they would have kept on that road after 2017, like having tracks like the 2017 RF Supercross tracks, but they just extended that, that track scaling and just perfected it and made it even better for 2018 and 19, man, we would have had some cool tracks in there. But instead, we have a bunch of bullshit, weird, trying to build it around a road. It's not fun without a road. Weird, shitty, completely different track makers than the dudes that were making the tracks in 17, in 16, and 15. Everything's been totally changed, It's just not that same thing anymore. And it's just so sad to see that happen to such a good game. So anyways, some of you guys are wondering if I'm going to pro race any in 2022. I mean, push all the hacking, cheating, key sharing, still doing nothing about that, still letting key shares back in a year later, okay, all that kind of stuff. And all of the weird, it's just not what it seems to be. RF pro racing on MX Simulator is not as professional as it seems to be from the outside looking in. And once you get deeper into it, you realize that about it. And it's just like, it just feels like a joke to me now. That's literally what it's just a big joke to me now. It's a random group of a bunch of random dudes that do whatever they think is best for the game. That's all RF really is. It's a bunch of random dudes that think they know what's best for the game. They don't care about, what made the game great to begin with. They don't care about what JLV's input is. I mean, he's been saying for a while now that the terrain deformation in the game, it's never going to get to where it's supposed to be. He can only do so much with the development of it and the optimization of it. But again, RF, whoever the hell is in control of RF at this point, I don't know. It changes so many hands. What the fuck even is it anymore? That's part of the problem right there. It's changed hands so many times now. It's lost its identity, Bro, they're not even doing it right, dude. I'm just telling you right now. And that's their argument always for Erode in the game. It's like, well, it changes the track over time, dude. It can be the worst beta testing, shittiest terrain deformation in a motocross game that you could ever imagine, but it changes the track over time, so we're going to keep it in there, right? Heaven forbid, look at the better alternatives, that's the problem. Everybody keeps looking at it like it's either Erode or we go back to racing exactly like it was in before Erode. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you take what you had with the amazing pinnacle golden era of the game, like 2015, 16, 17, take that golden era, okay, and you keep the core of it, which is you have versions of a track that have proper pre-made, proper ruts, proper skill gap, proper traction. The shit's not all built around a road and feels like a completely different, design of making tracks in the game. You keep that core level, but you severely limit the amount of time people have to qualify on it, so there's not going to be nowhere near as much laser lining, nowhere near as much all this shit they talk about why we need a road in the game. That's because you give people fucking unlimited qualifying and outdoors, all kinds of time. I think it's like hour-long qualifying before the actual race, and you can sit there and race on that exact track. When you're sitting there in warm-up mode watching like all of the other, heat races and stuff like that, you can sit there and just run unlimited amount of laps on a track. And that's what I'm saying. Having those three different versions, like a qualifying version, heat race version, and main event version of the track with all different levels of pre-made roughness and ruts and areas and where the ruts are and placement and all that, you could legitimately do that. And this would also give you the ability to have like like where you could have a rainy qualifying and then a wet track heat race, and then it develops into that more drier track version by the time you get to a main event. Could you imagine how badass that would be? So you can make different stages throughout the racing night, whereas what Erode does in the game, it's the same exact super smoothed out, built around a road track, and it restarts every single time you restart the race. So every qualifying session, the road goes back to complete nothing, the track goes back to complete smooth, and you start with nothing. You go to the heat race, it goes back to complete smooth, goes back to nothing. You go to the start of the main event or the start of the 450 Moto 2, goes back to complete smooth, no deformation at all. And that's just not how real life is. That's not how real life is. If you've ever watched, second motos, a lot of times there is giant ruts on the track on the first lap of a second moto in Lucas Oil Pro Motocross. That's not how MX Simulator is. But you could have that if you do this multiple version of tracks and you don't come out with each one of those versions until 5-10 minutes before that heat race or that second, moto of an outdoor race or whatever, so that nobody even sees it. Nobody can sit there and super laser line it and learn it. And then you wouldn't have anywhere near as many of those negatives as you think you used to have before Erode. Do you see what I'm saying? But you can't have any of that with the current system of the game. It's just, they're never going to get anywhere with it. I'm telling you right now, they're never going to, they're still with that, well, we're going to do this much pre-made and this much Erode. And then, nope, we're going to do this much Erode and this much pre-made. I'm just tired of beta testing the game. That's really, I'm tired of beta testing the game. That's why I don't ride with Erode anymore. I don't care anything about it. I've done beta tested long enough on MX Sim. I'm done with that part of the game. I care nothing about that. You know what I mean? Erode still doesn't make anywhere near the kind of rut and roughness and pre-made design that you can get with pre-made in the game. It's nowhere near that level of smoothness to the terrain, the different feelings you can get with like making a sand rut versus a mud rut versus a standard dirt rut. The terrain deformation is going to do the exact same thing regardless on what track you're on. Whether you're on, Southwick or Atlanta Supercross, it's gonna make the exact same kind of deformation in the game. So all these boys that think the deformation is doing all this good stuff on MX Simulator, again, if it was so amazing in the game, where's the numbers to prove that? Because I certainly don't see it anywhere. Okay? But, again, everybody thinks there's no good alternative, but the fact of the matter is there is. They just haven't even attempted it. They haven't even tapped into the 3 different versions of a track, not coming out with each version until right before you race. Don't come out with that qualifying version until right before qualifying. Don't come out with that heat race version until right before the heat races. Don't come out with that main event version until right before the main event. That will solve all of your problems. There's not going to be nowhere near as much lag. You don't have to fuck with any of the optimization with the Erode. You don't have to worry about, messed up any of that stuff. The pre-made's going to be like you want it. The ruts are going to be like you want it. You don't have to make the traction to try to make the Erode better. You don't have to lower the pre-made to try to make it around the Erode so that the Erode doesn't, you don't have to fuck with different Erode settings on different tracks. Last time I was pro racing, they were still all over the place with that. One race, the Erode was on like, 0.5. The next race, it was on like 0.7. The next race, it was on like 0.3. Hell, they were still even changing it from like heat race to main event. They had different... Just think about how stupid this is. They had different Erode levels going from the heat race to the main event, or from the qualifying to the heat race. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in real life, does the actual Erode level, the deformation of the track, the amount, the speed that it does that change any? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. If you go out there in real life Supercross with a full gate of riders, it's gonna be, developing and digging down in that dirt the same amount, regardless if it's in the heat race or it's in the main event. Obviously, in the main event, it's going to do more over time because it's more laps. But you see what I'm saying? It's not doing it any different. Whereas on MX Simulator, they were literally turning the dial of how much it actually deformed going from a heat race to a main event. Dog, that don't even make sense. That is stupid. There is so many workarounds they have to try to do to make the Erode system of the game more rideable. And it's just, they've had to jump through so many hoops and go under so many bridges. And it's just, I'm tired of that, I'm totally tired of that. And that's all there really is to that, man. So, like I say, even if they have some of the best track designs in 2022, which they're not going to, because they're still going to make it around Erode. I feel like the traction they had on tracks back in 2017 was so good. It was that perfect combo between friction, but also not like super slick. That it had a perfect combo between that. And it's so unfortunate to see what's happened to it, because it's just... They've attempted everything at this point. They've tweaked every knob to every extreme. They've turned every dial to every extreme. So if you've been pro racing in the past 3 years in this game, you've experienced every different level of deformation, to pre-made, to not, to, this level of pre-made, this rate of deformation with this level of whatever traction, less friction, more friction. It's just like, oh my God, there's no consistency to it anymore. There's no, you know what I mean? So, but personally, I don't know. We'll see when 2022, RF Supercross and shit comes around. I'm certainly not going to jump right into it. Anaheim 1, that's for damn sure. I'm going to have to see like a bunch of the tracks in a row being built as what I think they should be. And then it's going to have to, I'm going to have to stop seeing this dumb shit from all these pro racers in the game still doing all this dumb shit like key sharing, hacking, scamming, fixing races, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to have to see a drastic change in that and what RF does about those things. It's going to have to be like a combination of really good track designs for a certain amount of time in combination with, dropping band hammers more, better professionalism in RF. All of that would have to happen for a good stretch of time before I'm going to race in any more pro racing in the game. When it comes to RF pro racing. So yeah, it's just, I'm done being a experimental dummy in the game and, beta testing some way behind the 8-ball feature in the game that's nowhere near optimized to the level it should be, aka no cushion to the game. I'm just not going to do that anymore. So that's why you've seen that slow decrease from 2017 pro racing. I pro-raced in 2018, but not as much as I did in 2017. I pro-raced in 2019, but not as much as I did in 2018. Pro-raced in 2020, but not as much as I did in 2019. And then I didn't even pro-race at all in 21. I think that's the first year I've ever not pro-raced a single race in RF. So, it's just been that slow progression of moving away from it because it's not the same experience as it used to be. All the way around, from the track designs to the traction to the professionalism to the everything. I mean, everything has been changed. So, to me, it's just, at this point, I'm just going to have fun playing the game without Erode because that's how I have the most fun in the game, unless I'm going in there doing some goofy, let's test out some crazy Erode setting or whatever. Trying it on some of my old tracks or whatever just for the shits and giggles. That's the only time I'm going to ride with Erode in the game. Other than that, I do plan on going in there and making a lot more custom tracks in the game. I'm going to be doing an overhaul on all of my older custom tracks in the game. That's going to be a lot of fun doing that and coming out with that. And yeah, I'm just going to be having fun playing the game. Going to be getting in there doing some live streams, multiplayer, having fun. Getting back into the full-blown custom, track making in the game. That's something I still love to do more than anything. So I'm going to continue that. Going to be doing a lot of that in 2022. So yeah, but as far as the pro racing specifically, I'm just not interested in what they're doing with that. I've done seen what it is. I've done seen what it's going to be, because, that was the thing. When I went in there in 2018 and 19 pro racing, it was like, okay, what is this really going to amount to? What is this really going to turn into? And the reality of it is it was the same shit, different year. Same shit, different year. Same shit, different year. Beta testing the Erode system. It's still nowhere near to the level it should be. They're still tweaking, turning every dial, changing this, that, and another. And that's why I'm not doing it anymore, And you got to do a lot to push somebody like me away from the pro racing of MX Simulator. I mean, you got to do a lot because it is by far my most favorite game in the history of mankind. I put more than 8,000 hours into the game, and I love it more than anything else. So for me to be somebody that gets pushed away from the pro racing, you got to be doing something pretty shitty at that point to take it to get it to that level. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, it's just they're having that complex of it's too old of a game for what they're trying to do with it. It's too old of a game engine for what they're trying to get out of it. And they're stuck in between that rock and a hard place. They can't get it to where they want it to be. You got this real disconnect between the creator of the game, JLV, and the people running the pro racing of the game, which is just a bunch of random community people. And that's all it really is. You got a disconnect between those guys. Who knows what the hell they're going to do? There's no more consistency to anything anymore. It just gets to that point where they've changed it to such a level at its core, it's not the same thing anymore, so I'm not going to pro race in it anymore. So, but we'll see what can happen with the game in the future. Man, oh man. What a journey it's been. I still love the game, still love to go back and play it. Like that game that I remember pre-2018. It's still a bunch of fun going in there playing it like that. And I'm going to keep on doing that. And until they change their ways, that's how I'm going to play the game. And I'm going to keep going in there and making custom tracks that are not built around a road with proper pre-made, proper, ruts, proper roughness, proper skill gap, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to have fun doing it. I'm going to have fun racing on my custom tracks, riding on my custom tracks, getting in there with all of you dudes tuning into the live streams. It'd be fun to come out with like a new custom track and then have a live stream on it and do some fun races on it and stuff like that. That's my plan for 2022, to really focus in on the custom tracks of the game again and go in there and fix all of the problems that I had with my older custom tracks. I'm going to be making a big video on that as well. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to see what happens. But the good old MX Sim, man. Still a really fun game. Just unfortunate the sequence of events of the way everything's happened with it over these past 3 years is definitely not the way I thought it was going to go down. Man. It could have been so much more than what it ended up being in 2018, 2019, and 2020. It could have been so much bigger. It could have been pushed to so much bigger of a level. If it would have came out on Steam, they still had that professionalism in there. They said that they were going to start permabanning people the first time they get caught key sharing or any of that shit. They could have taken it to that next level, but they didn't. They just didn't.